catch up on. So much of the foundation of our country is shifting beneath our feet. What are we hearing from millennials around the country over their re-engagement, their engagement, and what they think is next in our society?
I think now there's a lot of anxiety about what's to come this weekend. As of November 1st, we're talking upwards of 40 million people losing out on SNAP benefits. We're talking nearly, 20 million children losing out on SNAP benefits. And I think as a millennial, I'm a part of the generation where we realized that we were going to be the first ones in recent memory that we're not going to make more money, have a higher income than our families, than our parents. And it's not too far off to have folks in our generation who are college educated, have master's degrees, professional degrees, and are in between jobs and are on SNAP. So what we're talking about that's coming to us this upcoming week and next week and beyond for God knows how long is something that is on the top of the mind of everybody. And that's even without even mentioning the constant attacks that ICE has been a part of in our community. I mean, they are in every part of Chicago. So I think now there's just this is a moment where a lot of us are really trying to grapple with, I think, not with the impact of an election, but then also too, just how fragile these institutions truly are.
Mm.
And we have started to realize, I don't think, not in my lifetime anyway, we have seen the impact of someone who has been so committed to their cause. Oftentimes when you see people get elected, there's this idea of, well, I have to make concessions. I have to work across the aisle. I have to, work with my Republican or my Democrat counterpart so we can figure this out.
Mm.
And what we have seen in the 9 to 10 months has been truly unprecedented for us, because it makes us feel as though with other elections that maybe enough wasn't done to truly help us out the way it should have been.
Mm.
Because when someone wants to tear down our institutions, literally, right, the parts of the White House, literally and figuratively, we see what can be done. But for many folks, Jesse, I think it's, how am I going to put a meal on the table, and what politicians, what leaders locally, statewide, otherwise are going to step to the forefront and do what needs to be done to make sure that we can just make it to the next day.
The optics are also all off as well. While Democrats and Republicans are reacting to each other, drawing congressional districts to elect more Democrats or to seize control by Republicans in various states in order to control Congress, approximately 5.5 million Californians are currently at risk of losing their CalFresh SNAP benefits due to the ongoing federal government shutdown, which has delayed November benefits. Looking ahead, new work requirements could also lead to an estimate 359,000 Californians losing benefits over time, and recent projections suggest millions more could be affected in the next decade due to changes in the program itself. This is going into Thanksgiving. This is going into the holiday season, where we could actually look at millions of our neighbors, about 2.2 million here in the state of Illinois, who would also be losing their benefits, which are usually transferred by way of a little card that allows those who need the supplemental nutrition and assistance program to provide them with something as basic as a meal on their table. We could be looking at people having to forego meals and simply not buy meals, and children who will not be getting fed in school programs, which are obviously necessary to continue their learning. In this moment, I'm thinking about government of, for, and by the people, and what kind of a government, either led by Democrats or Republicans, would even consider the idea that supplemental food and nutrition programs, that welfare benefits so that families could eat both in urban areas and rural areas, could be denied their basic assistance. Ernest, we have about 44 seconds before we come forward.
Yeah, this is a truly it's a humbling moment for a lot of us because, as I said before, I don't think many of us realize just how much this has helped people throughout the course of their lives. And whether you live in what you believe to be a wealthy area or poor area, I'm sure that there are folks near you that are going to be struggling because of this. And this is where we truly have to come together as a community and figure out what we can do. Mutual aid is a must.
Michael Harrington said that in America, we have the best dressed poverty in the world. Soon, our neighbors are going to be knocking on our doors, and we're actually going to find out who's on these programs because they're going to come to us in need. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Our very special guest in this hour is Ernest Krim III. More on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, Moving Mountain Mondays, when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
On Thursday evening, November 6th, you're invited to the next KBLA Talk 1580 Altadena Town Hall meeting. This time, we're convening at Victory Bible Church, 1497 North Hill Avenue in Pasadena. The town hall will once again be broadcast live on KBLA Talk 1580 from 4 to 6 p.m. on Thursday, November 6th. But you're invited to join us in person for this urgent and necessary community conversation. The theme for this Altadena Eaton Canyon Fire Town Hall is Understanding the Wildfire Recovery Compensation Fund. The primary focus of this gathering is to inform residents about Southern California Edison's newly launched Wildfire Recovery Compensation Program and provide clarity on eligibility and the claims process. There are plenty of questions to be asked, and only KBLA Talk 1580 has the right moderators to ask the tough questions, the right stakeholders and community activists to share their insights, and we have confirmed the participation of corporate executives from Southern California Edison to answer our queries. So be sure to join us at Victory Bible Church in Pasadena, 1497 North Hill Avenue on Thursday, November 6th. The event is free and open to the public, but registration is required at KBLA1580.com. That's KBLA1580.com. Light refreshments will be served immediately following the live town hall. This KBLA Talk 1580 Altadena Rising Town Hall is brought to you by the Black Freedom Fund.
Life moves fast. That's why California makes voting easy. You don't have to wait until Election Day. Drop your ballot at a secure drop box, visit an early vote center, or mail it. Over 80% of Californians vote early, and you can too. Plus, when you sign up for Where's My Ballot, you'll get a text or email the moment your ballot is received and counted. Don't delay, vote today. Get more information at sos.ca.gov. A message from the California Secretary of State.
If you're one of the millions of Americans behind on your taxes, if you're afraid to open your mail because IRS collection letters could be coming, listen carefully. The IRS is cracking down, taking paychecks, freezing bank accounts, revoking passports. That's a fact. But here's what most people don't know. There are official tax relief programs designed to help struggling taxpayers. Programs that could save you thousands if you qualify. No one knows these programs better than the experts at Optima Tax Relief. Optima's award-winning team will fight to protect your paycheck, your passport, and your property. Their tax attorneys and licensed professionals will work tirelessly to get you the best deal possible with the IRS. Everyday penalties and interest keep piling up, so don't wait. Call Optima now for a free consultation.
Call 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077.
Optima Tax Relief.
Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. This is Moving Mountain Mondays. Our very special contributor is my favorite millennial, Ernest Krim. Ernest, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thanks again for having me, brother.
I'm just going through some of the headlines, my brother, right now in California. Alameda County aims to aid residents who may lose SNAP benefits by November 1st. Food stamps. The U.S. government says it will stop paying for food aid next week. SNAP benefits won't be paid in the month of November. With SNAP benefits under threat, the Attorney General, Bondi, she is demanding something even more crazy, that we should be looking out for people who are hungry, but not in a positive way, who might want something to eat. Uncharted territory. At least 25 states plan to cut off food aid benefits in November. That is Thanksgiving. Trump's shutdown could ultimately lead to the halt in food support for millions in the state of California, millions in the state of Illinois. But quite frankly, it's not just the blue states. It's also our rural brothers and sisters, many of whom, quite frankly, I don't care who they voted for. They don't deserve to be in a position where they're starving, but many of whom must have buyer's remorse at this moment as they reflect upon the fact that they could be losing food assistance during the holidays. Ernest?
This makes me think, how do we define advanced? How do we define progress? How do we define great in this nation for a country that professes to be so great, so amazing, so advanced, the richest nation of all time, the greatest nation on the earth. God bless America. How are we at this juncture in 2025? It's really incomprehensible. I've been reflecting and thinking a lot, and it boggles my mind that we have reduced ourselves to this as a collective of people. You can make advancements on your cell phone every year. You can get the new iPhone, the new Android. You can get the new MacBook, the new Jordans, the new J's. I'm watching basketball over the weekend. Thank God the NBA is back to distract me for at least a little while, and I'm looking at all these new different camera angles they got, and we are just so advanced in all of the technological ways of doing things. But we can't even agree that kids shouldn't starve. I'm looking at stats. 45% of Black children as of 2021 receive SNAP.
Mm.
That's nearly half of all of our children in this, all of our Black children in this country.
Mm. Mm. Let me pick up on this definition of greatness. Martin Luther King Jr. defined greatness not by fame or power, but by service to others, stating that everybody can be great because everybody can serve. He emphasized the greatness comes from having a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love, allowing everyone to serve humanity, regardless of their education or status. True greatness is about being first in love, moral excellence, and generosity, and a consistent commitment to the well-being of all humanity. Are we looking at two different definitions of greatness when we think about what's taking place in our government and the moral leadership of Martin Luther King Jr.?
Oh, definitely. We have. I think there's the divide is the folks who have been bamboozled to think that greatness is in your pocketbook, or greatness is in purely in material gain or being rich. This idea, truthfully, the group of people who continue to vote for those who will put us in this position have been bamboozled, hoodwinked, right, into this allure of run amok, right, led astray to this ideal that they can one day have the riches of a Trump and his crony and all his group of people. They have been tricked into this divide, this idea, the social construct of race and racism that has kept us in this position. There are more of us who can relate, regardless of racial backgrounds, to poverty. We are all, regardless of how much money we make a year, closer to those of us listening. We're closer to being on the streets than we are to being a multi-billionaire. And we don't see that when we see each other oftentimes. Oftentimes we see the person that's taking money from us because that person may receive a benefit. Not talking about the billions of dollars that are going towards billionaires and otherwise for bailouts and things of that nature. That is what we have to truly grapple with. If we can't see each other as family when we look at each other, then we will continue to vote against our own interests. If we can't agree that kids shouldn't starve, I don't know what we're doing.
If you're listening very carefully to our program, I'm picking up on everything Ernest is saying, and I'm pushing it a little bit further for Ernest's further deep convictions and explanation of what it is he's saying. The first was an even deeper definition of great, and guess what? Ernest Krim right there. Now I want to push him a little bit on the ability to see.
Hmm.
Michael Harrington, in his book called The Other America, referred to America as having the best dressed poverty in America, which means you can walk by somebody in a three-piece suit that they got from a secondhand store and swear that brother right there sharp, not knowing that he's hungry because it's best dressed. Your hand-me-down clothes that ends up at Goodwill, for you, it's not your newest items, but you gave them to Goodwill, but someone is now wearing your hand-me-downs, which are far better than any clothes some other folk got. So what did poverty just become? Best dressed. It looks good. It smiles, it talks, it's articulate, it's thoughtful. But when people stop getting these benefits, when a man or a woman or a family is hungry, their attitude is going to change. Their disposition is going to change. And I don't care how well dressed they are, you're going to come to appreciate what Ernest just said, that from the inception of looking at your friend with their best dressed poverty, you never had a full appreciation for just what it was they were struggling with. And so I'm encouraging people right through here, as the government is shut down, to pay attention to details, to pay attention to your neighbor and their needs, to share where you can, because you don't know the reaction or the attitude of a person who does not have a slice of bread in their stomach, how they feel, what they may say, or how they're willing to do. We have to go, or what they're willing to do. We have to go a little bit further and offer a sandwich to a neighbor and ask a neighbor, can I help you out? Is there something I can do for you? What do you need? And you have to do it in a way that does not make them feel like you're looking down on them, as opposed to extending a helping hand. Does that make sense to you, Ernest?
100%. To your point, we have ridiculed poverty. We have shamed poverty. We haven't been honest with the fact that poverty is the expected status quo in America. Because in order for this country to function with those at the top doing what they do with capitalism, we have to have a class of poverty. But it shouldn't be that way because of how much we produce and how much we create and how hard people work. You think about all of the grocery stores, right? Even think of Walmart, right? Who refuses to pay people a living wage. Many of their workers are on SNAP. Many of the communities they are in have people who are on SNAP. So what's going to even happen to these grocery stores, these conglomerates as well? Everybody suffers with something like this. And we have to realize, like you said, that there are people who might be right next door to you who you would never think because of how they dress, how they talk, the cars they drive, maybe even the job they have that isn't paying them enough, that they do a great job of doing, are potentially going to suffer. And we have to realize that, again, that is not something to be shamed. When somebody is in need, you know, as a man, especially a Black man, we often have to grow in our masculinity and to be able to fully and to be able to tell someone when we need help, which is a difficult thing because we're taught to keep that thing inside or do things for ourselves, whereas some folks will say do for self. But do for self should be do for community. I'm in contact now with the school I used to work at. I'm asking counselors right now, what are we going to do? Because the school I taught at was 80% low income. I taught at a school before then that was probably 99% low income. I am like, my plea to everybody out there is at least think of the babies. Think of the babies. Like we need to be thinking about what can we do at our schools? Because even then, we had reduced lunch, right? That might be the only meal those kids are getting. And I saw schools come together during the pandemic and they were able to provide extra meals for people. And now we got to go into overdrive.
You know, I'm thinking with what you're saying, Ernest, in this moment, our Thanksgiving table this year is going to have to welcome some other families. That I know we want to sit around our table and just reminisce over what our family has done, but this Thanksgiving, Rather than having all of this food sitting around a table and no one ever finishing it and our eyes rolling up in the back of our heads in front of a football game,
Mhm.
it might be a couple of families having dinner with us this year.
Yeah.
It might be your children's classmates' families.
Mm.
Because when my father was a young child, his grandmama, Matilda Burns, we called her Grandma Tibby, she used to be willing to wear one stocking to church on one leg. That was her Sunday's best, growing up in rural South Carolina. But as long as Dad had some fresh clothes and some clean clothes, and Uncle Chuck, when they went to school, she was willing to go without. She didn't want other children in the school making fun of Jesse.
Mm.
He was already Jesse Robinson. He was already adopted before Grandma Helen married Charles Jackson and adopted him, Jesse Jackson. But she didn't want other children making fun of her child, her grandchild. So I'm wondering in this moment, those of you who are listening, that we have to think about pooling community through this season in a way that we might not have done before. Not to look down on any family in need, but just to welcome them into our home and ask our friends, can we do Thanksgiving together this year? Can we bring our families together in this celebration? Can we all share in this Thanksgiving and in this holiday season? Is there a way to think about not just your table, but whether or not, as Reverend Dr. Teresa Terry Hord Owens says on Moving Mountain Mondays, there's room for us at the table, a shared table. I'm thinking in this moment, Ernest, now is an opportunity for us to practice some of the religion and the theology that we say we believe in, but the government of the United States itself might be the source of the impetus and the reminder.
When you think about how much money circulates through our churches, and I'm talking about America's churches, not just in our community, because we have a lot of storefront churches where pastors are still working full-time jobs. When you talk about some of these suburban white churches, some of these, like, there's really no reason why anybody should starve during this time if we are people who truly profess to follow Jesus. And we think about the stories are right there. You know, like you're in an education system that's teaching you to read. You can pick up the Bible beyond listening to your pastor. The stories are right there. We also have to remember too, I want to give people this historical perspective that SNAP benefits, which were restarted with JFK in the 60s. This is something that has not even been as long as some folks' lifetime. So what were we doing before then, right? If you talk to your grandparents from the silent generation or the baby boomer generation, ask them what they had to do. Now, of course, back then, some of them had their own gardens in the backyard, which at this point in time, like some of us in the northern and maybe some of the western states are removed from that, but there were ways around this. Churches pulled resources together every Sunday. That Sunday dinner they had after church was for a reason, right? They pulled money together to make sure everybody was eating. But with that too, just like I said before, there has to be a certain level of vulnerability and an acceptance of that. I made a post yesterday. My call was, look, you need to be taking that money you was going to give the tithe and offering and give that to a food bank, or you need to demand that your pastor is holding a separate offering just for people in that congregation. And again, there has to be an awareness. That pastor, those leaders have to be like, yo, if you are struggling, come see us immediately. Nobody should leave that church building on this past Sunday or this upcoming Sunday, which will be November 2nd, without a plate. If you are in a community of people.
I think that's as profound as it gets. And I think that's a calling to all of our pastors and to all of our civic and religious organizations. There are going to be hungry people in our midst, and we need to pay attention to the details. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. This is the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, Moving Mountain Mondays with Ernest Krim on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward.
The biggest names, the best conversations. You're riding with Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Former Vice President Kamala Harris is not ruling out a 2028 presidential run.
There are many ways to serve. I've not decided yet what I will do in the future.
In a BBC interview, she brushed off polls showing challenges for her nomination, but says she's confident a woman will eventually win the presidency. Harris is currently promoting her new memoir, 107 Days. Authorities are investigating a shooting at HBCU Lincoln University in Philadelphia that left 1 dead and 6 injured during a homecoming event. The victim, 25-year-old Juwan Jeffers, has been identified and 1 person is in custody. And Sean Diddy Combs will stay behind bars until at least May 2028. The Bad Boy Records founder is serving a 50-month sentence for transporting individuals to engage in prostitution. His legal team has requested he serve his time at a low-security facility in New Jersey after several failed attempts to overturn his conviction. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Compassion sponsorship means food, healthcare, education, and more for a child in poverty. And there are thousands of kids who've been waiting over a year. End their wait. Sponsor a child with compassion today. Text the word radio to 83393.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The NBA sent a memo Monday morning to players, coaches, and staff of all 30 teams to reinforce the dangers of gambling and the impact it can have on their careers and livelihood. The memo is part of the league's response to the arrest of Portland Trail Blazers head coach Chauncey Billups, Miami Heat guard Terry Rozier, and former NBA assistant coach Damon Jones. They were among more than 30 people arrested by the FBI for their alleged roles in illegal gambling operations. The NBA is reviewing its policies on injury reports and safety measures for players and league personnel. The Lakers said Luka Doncic will miss at least a week with a sprained left finger and a lower leg contusion. Doncic was hurt in Friday's win over Minnesota. Doncic was off to a blazing start with 92 points in the first 2 games, the most by any Laker in team history in the first 2 games of the season. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Open enrollment is your opportunity to choose a plan that connects you to Providence's comprehensive healthcare network. Choose a plan that includes Providence and gain access to a dedicated team of highly trained primary care physicians and specialists. From nationally recognized doctors and hospitals, Providence ensures quality care is always within reach. When you choose Providence, you choose after-hours care through our nurse advice line, urgent care, or virtual express care. You choose 24/7 access through the Providence mobile app to message providers, request prescription refills, schedule appointments, check lab results, and more. This open enrollment, prioritize your well-being with the peace of mind that comes from choosing a provider that values excellence and compassionate care. Don't just choose a plan. Choose a plan dedicated to health equity and community engagement. Choose a plan that believes health is a human right. Choose a plan that delivers exceptional care and cares about your community. Choose a plan that offers Providence. Visit chooseprovidence.org to learn more.
Stop settling for weak sound. It's time to level up your game and bring the boom. Hit the town with the ultra-durable LG X Boom portable speaker and enjoy vibrant sound wherever you go. Elevate your listening experience to new heights because, let's be real, your music deserves it. The future of sound is now with LG X Boom. And for a limited time, save 25% at LG.com with code FALL25. Bring the boom. X Boom.
Do you have $10,000 or more in credit card debt? Are you barely getting by making minimum payments? With credit card debt reaching all-time highs, National Debt Relief is letting everyone know about great debt relief options now available to help people with overwhelming credit card debt. These options may reduce a large portion of your credit card debt. Get a free debt relief consultation when you call 800-259-9922. 800-259-9922. That's 800-259-9922.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. This is Moving Mountain Mondays, and our very special contributor is my good friend, Ernest Krim III. Ernest, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thanks again for having me, brother.
Ernest, check this out. The Democrats are blaming the Republicans. That's their messaging. Mike Johnson today is blaming the Democrats. That's his messaging today. In one ear, let's say my left ear, I'm hearing the Democrats. In my right ear, I'm hearing the Republicans. And whether they understand it outside of the bubble of Washington, D.C. or not, the message of the blame game isn't working. So, within the range of my voice, hear this. I turn to my Bible. So what does Matthew have to say about this? For I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. What does Isaiah have to say about it? If you pour yourself out for the hungry and satisfy the desire of the afflicted, then shall your light rise in the darkness and your gloom be as the noonday. And then here comes James trying to keep it real. What good is it, my brothers, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can that faith save him? If a brother or sister is poorly clothed and lacking in daily food, and one of you says to them, go in peace, be warmed and filled, without giving them the things needed for the body, what good is that? So also after faith, by faith itself, if it does not have works, it is dead. But someone will say, you have faith and I have works. Show me your faith apart from your works, and I will show you my faith by my works. It seems to me we're going into a season right here where we have to not completely trust everything the Democrats are saying or everything that the Republicans are saying, but even if we turn to where our faith is grounded in what we believe to be the truth, the book does speak to these issues. Ernest Krim?
You know, it reminds me of this African proverb, and I hope I don't get it wrong. Because I just remembered it on the spot, but I think it says that when the elephants fight, the grass suffers, something along those lines. And we are the grass in this situation. Like the blame game is so old, it's so played out to me. But what I think of when I hear this is this idea that honestly, I'm at a point where I realize that no one to me across the aisle is going to believe anything I say about how we got here. I can show them as clear as day what it is. I can show them, you know, the proof, the unverifiable proof of what Trump has done, how the Republicans have backed him up, and, you know, so on and so forth. And they'll still listen more to what he says out of his words to deny the truth of the matter. Democrats as well. They'll say they've tried their hardest, and I'll say you haven't tried hard enough. There's more you can do, and people won't believe it, right? So I wish for a moment that we could see each other in our common humanity and just do what needs to be done. And I think a lot of that, truthfully, as a former classroom teacher who has a wife who is struggling with this daily, cell phones, social media, it has us in a trance, right? That's the huge gap between where we need to be and where we are. Kids come into the classroom in a trance. You ask them to do something, they can't socialize, they can't speak up because their whole world is here. We have had all of our political discourse on these devices in recent memory. Elections have been decided because of a phone, because of misinformation. not a day goes by that someone is sharing something on my Facebook feed that is absolutely false, and there's no warning about it at all. I mean, it could be something as trivial as a sports quote, like an athlete saying something that never actually was said, and it has millions of retweets, millions of reposts. We have to find a way to go back to having conversations with people about these things in person without the labels that have been given to us, these political labels. We always enter these spaces with, okay, that person is blue, that person is red. So I already know I'm not going to agree with that person. And while that may be true in a lot of things, there are some things that we have in common that have to be used to pull us together. Many of us have, to me, similar values. I was a part of a PBS documentary about 6 years ago called Divided We Fall. And the producer, Tom Cosgrove, brought together 6 people from both sides of the spectrum who voted Democrat and voted Republican, various ethnic backgrounds. And we had to have conversations over the course of the weekend about not just what we disagreed with, but we were forced to sit in rooms with people that we otherwise would never have sat in a room with and have a conversation and find some type of commonality. I know that that's a long-term solution, and I know it's a lot more complex than that because of how we are where we are now. But I'm telling y'all as my plea that what we are doing now to try to solve the problem that is in front of us is actually going to lead to a wider divide and a wider gap. These corporations are profiting off of our doom scrolling. They're profiting off of the misinformation. They're profiting off of the algorithmic twist that they provide us with based on one click that we have. They're profiting off of our outrage. And we are so consumed with outrage that we are not committed to any outcomes. What are we going to do when November 1st happens without any clear end in sight? We don't have a president, y'all, who cares. He will let his people starve at the same time build a 90,000 square foot ballroom because he has no intention of leaving.
That ballroom ain't all he's building. He's building something under that thing. There's a whole world they're building under that ballroom. There is no way on that campus or that compound this is just about a ballroom. That's dishonest. That's misleading. So $350 million to build a ballroom? Nah, you're building something under there that is, a new world for the government out of the eyes of the American people. Not of, for, and by the people, but out of sight by the people. A government that you can't see will be under that ballroom. Hey, let me ask you this question. Just to bring it a little bit home. If I were a teacher in a California or a Illinois public school, how would I be able to tell if one of my students was without food, that they were missing a meal, or that they were in a personal struggle, that Thanksgiving may not be the same for them, but they don't want to say it, or Christmas. This Christmas may be without gifts or toys, or some students might even wake up to the idea that Santa Claus is a myth a little earlier than they thought, while other students will come to school and say, hey, this is what I got, this is what I got, and this is what I got. As a teacher, observing some kids share with other kids the meal that they ate, the things that they received, and the other students remaining quiet in the conversation. What does a teacher do?
Wow, that's a profound question. And that's something that we had to deal with from afar in 2020 during the pandemic. Families were allowed, while we were virtually teaching, to come up to the school and get the meals that they were missing and things like that. You really have to answer this in 2 different ways because, you have younger kids who will come in and they're not going to probably self-advocate, but at the same time, they'll probably be a lot more brutally honest. If you have like a kindergarten first grader, they might straight up tell the teacher, Mr., Miss, I haven't had food. I'm hungry. Can I have something? But I dealt with high school kids, and these are kids who, especially from our culture, we want to come in wearing certain clothes, looking a certain way, appearing a certain way. That's why we cannot judge based on how they look. You can most often tell, and it's dependent on the personality. Behavior changes if that child starts to act out a little bit more, but also too on the other end for your more introverted children, disengagement. But more importantly than that, we have to give kids an anonymous way to speak to people, counselors, psychologists, about their need in this moment. If we don't provide that, then we're missing out on a lot of kids who could potentially be starving.
And they have to pay attention because certainly during this season, these are the highest rates of suicidality, where people during the Christmas holidays feel like there's no reason to live. And we have to be willing to work with people, listen to them, and pay attention to what they're going through. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Ernest Krim is our very special guest on Moving Mountain Mondays. More when we come forward.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Established in 2020 during a time of deep racial unrest across our state and country, the Black Freedom Fund was created to make sure that leaders and organizations working to support Black communities and build power have the resources they need to stay in the fight for the long haul. We believe that those closest to the issues impacting our communities know best how to solve them. That's why in just the last 5 years, we've granted more than $45 million to over 200 grassroots organizations across California. That is the largest collective investment in Black organizing in history, and we're just getting started. We are clear-eyed and committed, more now than ever, to our people, our power, and our possibility. Join us in creating a future where Black people harness their full power to shape their lives and realize a just world for all. Learn more at fundblackfreedom.org. That's fundblackfreedom.org. The Black Freedom Fund is proud to sponsor Conversation Live Altadena Rising with James Farr on KBLA Talk 1580.
Life moves fast. That's why California makes voting easy. You don't have to wait until Election Day. Drop your ballot at a secure drop box, visit an early vote center, or mail it. Over 80% of Californians vote early, and you can too. Plus, when you sign up for Where's My Ballot, you'll get a text or email the moment your ballot is received and counted. Don't delay, vote today. Get more information at sos.ca.gov. A message from the California Secretary of State.
Donald Trump has all but declared war on California, sending in a National Guard, blocking disaster relief, and cutting funds to our colleges. And now, he and Texas Republicans are trying to rig the next election by stealing congressional seats from Black voters in states like Texas.
They want to rig these elections, and they want the power that gerrymandering provides.
Seriously, look it up. But Prop 50 is how we fight back. It gives Californians the power to fight fire with fire and beat Trump at his own game. Prop 50 creates temporary emergency congressional maps that level the playing field and protect the power of Black votes. Not just in California, but across the country. Your vote matters, and the whole country is counting on California to lead. So use your vote to protect our power, our history, and our future. Vote yes on Prop 50 by November 4th. Ad paid for by Yes on 50, the Election Rigging Response Act, Governor Newsom's Ballot Measure Committee, Ad Committee's top funders, HMP for Prop 50, and Fund for Policy Reform.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Our very special guest is our regular contributor, Ernest Krim III. He is a Emmy-nominated producer, public teacher, anti-racist educator, and hate crime victor. And in the next hour, but joining us in this one, is Dr. Sandhya Jha, an anti-oppression consultant currently working on a PhD at the University of Pennsylvania's School of Social Policy and Practice with a focus on comparing contemporary progressive and conservative social movements. Sandhya is the founder and former executive director of the Oakland Peace Center and multi-faith community organizer, an ordained pastor with master's degrees in both divinity and public policy. Dr. Jha is comfortable in the pulpit, on the picket line, or hanging out with friends and friends to be over a good cup of coffee, a good cup of tea, a good story. And if it's Ernest and I, probably a Jack on the Rocks. Hi, Dr. Jha. Welcome to Jesse.
Hi. So good to be with you.
I'm so glad that you're here. First of all, have I pronounced your first name correctly?
It's actually Shonda, but I can go with anything you want to call me, sir.
Okay, well, Shonda, that is that. Thank you, because I would have slaughtered it for the next hour and 10 minutes. Sandhya, Ernest Krim and I have been talking about the SNAP benefit programs and the government shutdown and what the consequences of it could be. And I can imagine, certainly for Madam President Terry Teresa Hord Owens, that the concern for what it means for the poor, for what Michael Harrington referred to as the invisible poor, the best dressed poverty in America, it has to be concerning for the ministry and for the ministry that you preach as well. Dr. Jha, your thoughts?
I think that's absolutely right. And I think the reason the church has been involved in social movements and social justice work is because anything that's happening in the country is affecting the people in the pews. And I was really struck, Ernest, when you were talking earlier about the immense wealth that faith communities have. It turns out if all of the faith communities in this country were counted as one entity, we would be the largest private landholder in the country. And that matters because what can you do with that land? I don't know about the rest of y'all, but we're facing a huge housing crisis here in the Bay Area in California. And there is a lot of land that could, in fact, be transformed into housing, into places for service. And at the same time, no matter how much we in faith communities do to provide food for those in need, we're never going to be able to meet the profound need there is, which is why we need to be engaged in demanding better policies around food provision. I know back in the late 2010s, they did some number crunching after the first Trump administration had reduced funding for food aid. And if every single church in the country were to add $100,000 to their budget just for food provision, it wouldn't have been enough to meet the complete need. This is why we're not just called to service. We're also called to advocacy because we're in such a time of crisis right now.
Ernest Krim?
That makes me think of just how the important thing that we have to consider is this is our tax money not at work. I think that's what I get from what you're saying, Reverend Jha. Like this is why there's a demand. This is why this is such an urgent cry. It's not that they were giving us money. I think we always have to remember, maybe if we begin to rephrase this, like we pay their salaries. They take money from each of us to give to themselves. They're still getting paid. They want to give our money to ICE instead of feeding us and providing food, water, and ice. Like that's what we're facing. Previous to this, we fed ourselves, but it wasn't enough. And we also have to consider that this is manufactured. Poverty is created. You can go to various places on the planet, even in America, in some places, some backyards, and grab some food off the tree. God gives us this freely. We didn't have to deposit money into an ATM to get the seed to grow from the ground. Everything has been privatized here. So we have been conditioned to think that we have to labor for 40 hours a week to get something that was already given to us. We need to really study indigenous people that were on this space and what they did and how they provide. They didn't have to have all the things and provisions we have in place. Everybody was taken care of. We can't take care of kids. If we don't want to take care of elderly, what are we doing? If everybody here was making a living wage for their labor, the hard work for these billion-dollar companies, Amazon's about to lay off several thousand people, not because they're suffering, but because they want to automate everything. If everybody was being paid what they deserve, there would be no need for this. But even at the same time, I would say that every American deserves to have access to free food because it is our right, not because of the government, but because of the creator.
Dr. John?
I actually really love that because you're reminding me of one of my favorite passages that I think we get completely wrong so much of the time. When somebody brings a coin to Jesus and says, you know, who should we be giving our money to? And he says, give me a coin. It has a picture of Caesar on it. He says, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar, render unto God that which is God's. And a lot of people say this is proof that we're supposed to follow the laws of the government. I think Jesus was messing with us. I think he was actually saying, none of it belongs to Caesar. Even the gold that the coin was pressed from, that's not Caesar's. All of it belongs to God. And that means with the divinity of God within us, that is supposed to be shared by all of God's children.
You know, why am I paying for fresh water?
Right.
I mean, it's so essential to life. Why is there a water bill if you think about it?
Mm-hmm.
And to Ernest's point, in the wealthiest nation in the history of the world, Dr. Ja, why does a person have to go hungry or ill-housed, without shelter, and for that matter, since we're on the subject, without health care?
Mm-hmm.
Because these are the things that we have been endowed with by our Creator that we ought to be receiving as a minimum floor of equal high quality on the basics of life. There shouldn't be a starving person in the United States. In fact, America makes enough money and has an economy large enough to take 1% of 1% of the federal budget and feed a significant number of the world's poor. And by shutting down the United States Agency for International Development, United States essentially as a nation said, we're not doing that anymore. And so now we see starvation in Somalia, starvation in Ethiopia. We see starvation in many countries around the world where the idea of starvation we thought nearly eliminated, and vaccinations until such time as the United States, with 1% of 1% of its federal budget, no longer assumes that responsibility. Now, I try not to speak in this kind of language or these kinds of words, but if there ever was a nation going to hell for that, America is on its way. You know what? I'm going to ask Ernest to stay with us into the next segment of the first segment before we lose Ernest, because I'm really enjoying this conversation. But Ernest, you know we have 2 minutes before we close this segment, and I need your word of hope even as we head into the second hour.
Yeah. I think the message of hope today is really just us. We're proof that there's always hope. As long as we're having these conversations, as long as we keep that concern and that understanding that we deserve better, there is hope. I think hope comes from having perspective and understanding that, again, we have been here without these systems longer than we have been. And we have these systems as a result of the people who live without them because of their advocacy and agitation. These are not things that were given to us. These were things we demanded. These were things, this is how I wanted the government to function as. We forced them to do this during those times, and they took our money and gave us a portion back. This is what we meant by reinvesting in the community and not in policing. And we're seeing this on an even grander scale now. So I think we just have to keep that at the top of the mind. These things can only happen with our permission. These things are created. So if we want something better, then we must resolve to come together and make and create something better. And I truly believe that we have that ability as long as we stay persistent.
We have two very special and extraordinary guests. Dr. Shanda Ja and Ernest Krim are going to be joining us in the first segment of our next hour on Moving Mountain Mondays. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to Moving Mountain Mondays on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. More with Dr. Ja and Ernest Krim when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Former Vice President Kamala Harris is not ruling out a 2028 presidential run.
There are many ways to serve. I've not decided yet what I will do in the future.
In a BBC interview, she brushed off polls showing challenges for her nomination, but said she's confident a woman will eventually win the presidency. Harris is currently promoting her new memoir, 107 Days. Authorities are investigating a shooting at HBCU Lincoln University in Philadelphia that left 1 dead and 6 injured during a homecoming event. The victim, 25-year-old Juwan Jeffers, has been identified and 1 person is in custody. And Sean Diddy Combs will stay behind bars until at least May 2028. The Bad Boy Records founder is serving a 50-month sentence for transporting individuals to engage in prostitution. His legal team has requested he serve his time at a low-security facility in New Jersey after several failed attempts to overturn his conviction. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Compassion sponsorship means food, healthcare, education, and more for a child in poverty. And there are thousands of kids who've been waiting over a year and their wait. Sponsor a child with compassion today. Text the word radio to 83393.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The NBA sent a memo Monday morning to players, coaches, and staff of all 30 teams to reinforce the dangers of gambling and the impact it can have on their careers and livelihood. The memo is part of the league's response to the arrest of Portland Trail Blazers head coach Chauncey Billups, Miami Heat guard Terry Rozier, and former NBA assistant coach Damon Jones. They were among more than 30 people arrested by the FBI for their alleged roles in illegal gambling operations. The NBA is reviewing its policies on injury reports and safety measures for players and league personnel. The Lakers said Luka Doncic will miss at least a week with a sprained left finger and a lower leg contusion. Doncic was hurt in Friday's win over Minnesota. Doncic was off to a blazing start with 92 points in the first 2 games, the most by any Laker in team history in the first 2 games of the season. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
You ready? You're invited to the KBLA Talk 1580 Community Health and Wellness Fair on Saturday, November 8th, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Catch at Audubon Middle School in Leimert Park, 4120 11th Avenue. Join us for a day of health, healing, and community connection. There will be health screenings, immunizations, wellness information, a Catch Charter School recruitment fair, plus music and healthy snacks. And it's all free at the KBLA Talk 1580 Community Health and Wellness Fair, Saturday, November 8th, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Audubon Middle School in Leimert Park, 4120 11th Avenue. Come out and bring the entire family. And if you have not yet checked out our KBLA Health and Wellness Hub, you should at KBLA1580.com. KBLA Talk 1580 thanks Catch Charter School, Prudential, Eastside, Cedars-Sinai, and St. John's Community Health. At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that a healthy community is a thriving community.
That's right, baby.
I'm Jesse Jackson. Looking forward to the Jesse Jackson Factor on KBLA Talk 1580. Our very special guests in the last hour were our regular contributors, Ernest Krim III, an Emmy-nominated producer who is also an author. And in this hour, our very special guest is Dr. Shanja Jha, an anti-oppression consultant working on a PhD at the University of Pennsylvania, the School of Social Policy and Practice. I was going to lay out all of Ernest's books. Ernest Krim wrote Black History Saved My Life, Black History Can Save Your Life, The ABCs of Affirming Black Children, The ABCs of Affirming Black Children, Part 2, and Reverend Jha's works, which are now coming on my screen. They include Rebels, Despots, and Saints, which brings together storytelling, research, and solid organizing tools. Liberating Love devotional, 365 love notes from God. Transforming Communities, how people like you are healing their neighborhoods. And Pre-Post Racial America, Spiritual Stories from the Front Line. To our special guest, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you so much.
So glad you're here, Reverend Shaw. Reverend Shaw, can I ask you a question? And I guess I'm going to ask the same question of Ernest, whom I know will be departing us shortly. And by the way, next Monday on Ernest's show, CNN contributor Joey Jackson, attorney Joey Jackson, will be our very special guest on our show with Ernest Krim next Monday. Looking forward to that show very much. Reverend Shaw, it seems to me that when people are going through tough economic times, that it becomes difficult to see them. Now, I say to see them because someone's driving somewhere in traffic right now saying, what is Jesse asking? And I'm 60 years old. And maybe it was when I was 50, maybe 48, that I began to take my time to see people, to see them. And I was profoundly moved by the movie Avatar when one of the Na'vi said to another Na'vi, who was actually an avatar that she fell in love with and he fell in love with her, she said to him, I see you. I see you. During these economic times, particularly in our system, Reverend Ja, it is difficult to see people. Help us see them.
I really appreciate you saying that. One of my beloved colleagues here in Oakland, the Reverend Michael McBride, has encouraged all of us to greet each other with an ancestral phrase from his community, Sawubona, which literally translates to "I see you." I think that that's an important thing for us to wrestle with. I often hear people complaining, there aren't enough people in the church pews. Why aren't people showing up to volunteer? And that economic crisis that so many of us are facing mean we have to work extra hours. We have to prioritize earning extra money over showing up for each other. And it's all part of this larger crisis that we're in, this economic crisis that we're in. And what you're inviting us to do, I think, is a critical element of what it means to be, for me, for our community, people of faith, which is to say your value isn't just in what you generate. This is what, Ernest, you were talking about at the end of the last hour. Our value comes from the fact that we are sacred, not the fact that we can generate profit. I think it's also really important for us to do exactly what you're talking about, Mr. Jackson, which is to take a moment to look around, to recognize that the person in front of us is carrying a burden that is not necessarily visible to us. And that if we actually understand that we are family to each other, that we need to extend to them love and grace. You all were talking in the last hour about how that sometimes means talking to people that we have radical differences with. And one of my heroes is the founder of the Othering and Belonging Institute in Berkeley. He talks a lot about how seeing someone, listening to someone is a critical and foundational gift. Being seen, being heard is a critical and foundational need. That's not the same as agreeing with someone. It's not the same as saying that hateful thing that you have just said is okay to say. But being seen, being recognized is foundational to the work of change that we're called to right now.
I think that's right. Ernest, on the question of being seen and being able to see someone.
To echo Reverend Josh's powerful reflections, the thing that came to mind was just the thoughts and the judgment we have when we see those who are houseless on the street. There is a social media page in my immediate community that professes to be about news, and they have often taken pictures or posted pictures of houseless folks or people who might be addicted online and poked fun at them. And the thing that's even more disturbing about that to me, with the following they have, is the people in the comments who join in. And I think that is, again, going back to what I said in the previous hour, the humanity that is removed from us during social media discourse, and how we can join in and bully each other without the human nature, the basic human empathy that we are supposed to have. If our first thought when we see those on the street begging is, do they really deserve it? If that's our first thought, then we have a long way to go. And I think that's a part of why we can continue to vote for people and agree with people who share those similar sentiments. Seeing the basic humanity in all of us is an understanding that, again, we are all close to being in that same position. And we have to really humble ourselves in this moment. Like you said, Brother Jesse, there's a reason why he's building that so-called ballroom, and it's because of everything that's going underneath, which makes me wonder, what is he planning?
Ernest, thank you very much for your participation in the show this week.
Thank you. See you next week.
Look forward to seeing you next week. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. More with Reverend Ja when we come forward on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
On Thursday evening, November 6th, you're invited to the next KBLA Talk 1580 Altadena Town Hall meeting. This time, we're convening at Victory Bible Church, 1497 North Hill Avenue in Pasadena. The town hall will once again be broadcast live on KBLA Talk 1580 from 4 to 6 p.m. on Thursday, November 6th. But you're invited to join us in person for this urgent and necessary community conversation. The theme for this Altadena Eaton Canyon Fire Town Hall is Understanding the Wildfire Recovery Compensation Fund. The primary focus of this gathering is to inform residents about Southern California Edison's newly launched Wildfire Recovery Compensation Program and provide clarity on eligibility and the claims process. There are plenty of questions to be asked, and only KBLA Talk 1580 has the right moderators to ask the tough questions, the right stakeholders and community activists to share their insights, and we have confirmed the participation of corporate executives from Southern California Edison to answer our queries. So be sure to join us at Victory Bible Church in Pasadena, 1497 North Hill Avenue on Thursday, November 6th. The event is free and open to the public, but registration is required at KBLA1580.com. That's KBLA1580.com. Light refreshments will be served immediately following the live town hall. This KBLA Talk 1580 Altadena Rising Town Hall is brought to you by the Black Freedom Fund.
Life moves fast. That's why California makes voting easy. You don't have to wait until Election Day. Drop your ballot at a secure drop box, visit an early vote center, or mail it. Over 80% of Californians vote early, and you can too. Plus, when you sign up for Where's My Ballot, you'll get a text or email the moment your ballot is received and counted. Don't delay, vote today. Get more information at sos.ca.gov. A message from the California Secretary of State.
If you're one of the millions of Americans behind on your taxes, if you're afraid to open your mail because IRS collection letters could be coming, listen carefully. The IRS is cracking down, taking paychecks, freezing bank accounts, revoking passports. That's a fact. But here's what most people don't know. There are official tax relief programs designed to help struggling taxpayers. Programs that could save you thousands if you qualify. No one knows these programs better than the experts at Optima Tax Relief. Optima's award-winning team will fight to protect your paycheck, your passport, and your property. Their tax attorneys and licensed professionals will work tirelessly to get you the best deal possible with the IRS. Everyday penalties and interest keep piling up, so don't wait. Call Optima now for a free consultation.
Call 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077.
Optima Tax Relief.
Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on Moving Mountain Mondays with Reverend Teresa Hord Owens, who is not with us today, the faith not to fall. She is the president and general minister of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. Joining us in her stead is Reverend Shonda Jha, an anti-oppression consultant currently working on a PhD at the University of Pennsylvania School of Social Policy and Practice, with a focus on comparing contemporary progressive and conservative social movements. Reverend Jha is the founder and former executive director of the Oakland Peace Center and multi-faith community organizer, and ordained minister with a master's degree both in divinity and public policy. Reverend Jha is comfortable in the pulpit, on the picket line, or hanging out with friends and friends to be over a good cup of coffee and a good story. Reverend, welcome forward to our show.
Thank you so much. Thank you to you for, when I was a baby congressional staffer way back in the late 90s, early 2000s, you were such a hero to so many of us who were desperate to see our party actually care about the people it was supposed to be caring about. And you were also the only person at the bipartisan congressional baseball game that actually made contact with the ball. So I have fond memories of you from long before this time.
Oh, Reverend, we could sit here and talk about stories for a moment, but I am so grateful. Thank you for making me smile and for making my day. I'm so grateful. And wow, that was a long time ago.
Long time ago.
And I came into contact with the ball. At least one person witnessed that.
I think you were the only one.
Let me dig into your knowledge of conservative and progressive movements. I'd like to think that I'm center left, but I also defy labels. I'm pro-emancipation. I'm for the freedom of people. I am not hung up on the definition of the word liberty. As Abraham Lincoln said, I know that liberty for some means to do with themselves and their lives what they choose to. I am definitely on that side of liberty. But the other definition that Abraham Lincoln recognized in our system, and that is the liberty for other people to do what they want to do with other people and their lives, and tell them what to do and how to live their lives. So I recognize we have a major disagreement over what constitutes liberty, and we can sit right in front of each other and talk right past each other around the definitions. So I just consider myself to be someone who supports emancipation, which is why Abraham Lincoln chose to name it emancipation. With that said, I do have this question about whether or not, given your study of conservative and progressive movements, of whether or not we as a nation are hopelessly divided.
I think it's a great question. And I think you and Dr. Owens often evoke the Reverend Dr. William Barber, another one of my great heroes, who often talks about how it's not about left and right, it's about right and wrong. And I think you're tapping into exactly that issue. And, you were talking about the partisan conflict happening over the budget right now. And most Americans don't care whose fault it is. What they know is it's Congress's fault. Because for most Americans, it isn't about left and right. It's about right and wrong.
Interesting.
And I think it's important for us to remember. So I do a lot of studying of left and right movements, and I come out of the faith tradition. I think one of the things that's really important for us to remember is the faith community for the first 40 years of the 20th century was by and large united around in improving conditions for working people. And they were so united, we were so united on that, because the people in the pews knew what it was like to be oppressed, to be exploited, to be mistreated and undervalued and put at great risk. And the religious leaders were responsive to that. In fact, the Federal Council of Churches, the first thing they ever did, which was the conglomerate of the major denominations in the US, in 1909, they drafted a 12-point position on workers' rights. Every single one of those points showed up in the New Deal that Franklin Delano Roosevelt put into place. because the faith community was so powerful and so united.
Mm.
It took decades for the National Association of Manufacturers, the corporate interests, to dismantle that unified front. It took them decades, it took them millions and millions of dollars, and it took them having to go a sideways route. They couldn't convince pastors that the corporate interests were the good guys. They had to stir up elements of the Red Scare in order to break apart a very strong pro-worker faith-based coalition. I think it's worth noting that in similar fashion, the civil rights movement, the U.S. freedom movement, wasn't about left and right. It was about right and wrong. And it affected that much powerful change because ultimately, through a great deal of very, very hard work, people came to realize what was right and what was wrong. Whenever we focus on that, I think we break apart those partisan conflicts. It's when we allow certain narratives to create a left and right in a country where we actually want to live in the center that we get into trouble. When we focus instead on a different division between doing what helps us thrive and doing what only helps a few people thrive, we can actually make huge strides.
You know, Reverend John, I think about the moments in our nation's history, our shared vision, and how rare those moments are where we actually come together.
Yes.
One of those reflections for me was obviously when the Challenger blew up.
Mm-hmm.
I was a student at North Carolina A&T, and Reagan talked that night, even though I disagreed with his politics and many of his policies and the spirit that was undergirding his administration. He talked about these men and women having touched the face of God.
Yeah.
How profound that moment was, and a sad moment. In fact, I was a student at North Carolina A&T, and one of the Challenger's Challenger's passengers was Ronald McNair, and the African American on the flight, and Onizuka was on the flight, and Christy McAuliffe was on the flight, and Dad referred to it as a rainbow in the sky. All Americans were actually participating in what normally would have been an all-white male flight, where some people might have felt some kind of way, but we all participated in that national moment, that national grief. Obviously, September 11th. And other moments where we've seen schools and churches and just innocent people at synagogues being shot and killed for no reason whatsoever, nothing short of something that might be totally insane. I raise these moments of national tragedy as the moments that bring us together, because far and few between are these moments where we come together, where I'm on my side of town celebrating July 4th, but you're on your side of town celebrating July 4th. I'm celebrating Gettysburg. Thank God we stopped the state's rioters. You're celebrating July 4th, 1776. I mean, on this side of town, we're commemorating the birthday of Martin Luther King. On this side of town, they're commemorating Robert E. Lee Day. I mean, we just are never together, you know, left and right. And this history isn't something that just pops up in the last election. This is something we have been working on unconsciously. And it is only these unfortunate moments, Reverend, that bring us together. And even the unfortunate moments are now subject to division. We can't agree that Martin Luther King Jr.'s mission is different than Charlie Kirk's. All we know is that they were both assassinated. Yeah. And both are tragedies, but both also, Reverend Ja, they say different things. Yeah. What's it going to take, in your analysis of conservative and progressive movements, to bring the people together in a way that they stay together?
You know, it is always going to be harder to get us to be in. It is not natural for us to be invested in people who are different than ourselves. And I often hear people talking about that as if that means it can't happen. But the fact of the matter is, for me as a follower of Jesus, Jesus was constantly asking us to do things that were not natural. It was not natural to give up what you had when you had an excess. in order to take care of people you didn't know. It was not natural for us to create a community in those days where women had leadership opportunities and critical roles in the movement. It wasn't natural for people from different political factions to come together, which was true of Jesus' disciples. And the notion that we can only build community when it is natural, when it is convenient, when it feels easy, is one of the greatest lies, I think, in society. And I can think of example after example on small scales, neighborhood by neighborhood, where people said, it may not feel good for us to figure out how to sit down with each other, but when we do, when we take the time to get to know each other, we can affect profound change. And I do think that that is the arduous, tedious task ahead of us, is getting together neighborhood by neighborhood and finding tools to listen to each other and build community together. It turns out provision for homeless people, addressing crime issues, finding ways to create a better environment, actually emerge out of politically diverse groups when they get together in spaces where all of their voices are valued. I think it's not magic, it's not easy, but it is absolutely tried and true that when we can find ways to come together at a scale where we can see each other and know each other, that's where the change happens.
I completely agree with you, and I identify with everything that you've said. It certainly reflects my faith, it reflects my spirit, and it certainly reflects my politics. I want to make a pivot before we come forward, which is the hard 30 for our break. Even in light of our efforts to build community, we still find ourselves, as Reverend Terry Hord Owens said last week, firmly rooted in our faith, but also firmly rooted at this hour in a resistance. Your thought about the No Kings March and what next towards a beloved community that we are looking at? We have about 2.5 minutes.
My favorite sign from the No Kings March was the one that said, "Not today, spray tan." So that's my major takeaway from No Kings. It's interesting because in Oakland, we come from the legacy of the Black Panther Party, and I would love to talk more about that in a minute. But it means that a lot of people here were very concerned that it wasn't a radical enough vision, and that it didn't have a specific enough ask. I do think there is something inspiring about the fact that over 2% of the US population was in the streets saying, we actually do still believe in democracy. I think that gives us a lot of hope. And I think it is a beginning, as long as we are building out the next steps. I know that out of No Kings in my community, there came groups of people coming together and saying, when ICE rolls in, what are we going to do to protect our neighbors? When we watch SNAP benefits under attack, what are we going to do to push our lawmakers and to provide resources at a small scale? I think that's the hope.
I think that's right. I think, and I'll save our larger conversation about the Black Panthers when we come forward in 2 minutes. But I did want to emphasize that I have heard this same concern that, what is the takeaway? What is the next steps? For example, on our program last Thursday, Dr. Johnny Mack says that, the triple evils of militarism, racism, and materialism, to which Reverend Owens and Reverend Barber constantly share with us, are still in front of us. These underlying facts are not part of the movement against tyranny or the No Kings response. There is, you just can't take $1 trillion from the budget for the military and act like it belongs there while ignoring poverty, while ignoring 5.5 million people in the state of California who are going to be cut off of these benefits by next week, where this is going to be a very different Thanksgiving than any Thanksgiving we've experienced in my lifetime. The attack on every single member of the Rainbow Coalition in various categories is also deeply troubling. More with Reverend Ja when we come forward on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, Moving Mountain Mondays on KBLA Talk 1580.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. New York City is testing a new emergency alert system linking public schools directly to 911.
This is not taking place anywhere in the country.
Black Mayor Eric Adams says it launched at Spring Creek School in Brooklyn, the first U.S. school with a direct 911 connection. The system can trigger a response in under 10 seconds and will expand to 51 schools citywide this year. Allies of Black Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson are set to push for a corporate tax hike in Springfield. The proposal includes raising the corporate income tax, taxing digital ads, and increasing the personal property replacement tax. And philanthropist Mackenzie Scott has donated $38 million to the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, bringing her total gifts to the HBCU to $58 million in 5 years. The university says the donation will fund student aid, faculty recruitment, mental health services, and classroom upgrades. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Compassion sponsorship means food, healthcare, education, and more for a child in poverty. And there are thousands of kids who've been waiting over a year. End their wait. Sponsor a child with compassion today. Text the word radio to 83393.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The NBA sent a memo Monday morning to players, coaches, and staff of all 30 teams to reinforce the dangers of gambling and the impact it can have on their careers and livelihood. The memo is part of the league's response to the arrest of Portland Trail Blazers head coach Chauncey Billups, Miami Heat guard Terry Rozier, and former NBA assistant coach Damon Jones. They were among more than 30 people arrested by the FBI for their alleged roles in illegal gambling operations. The NBA is reviewing its policies on injury reports and safety measures for players and league personnel. The Lakers said Luka Doncic will miss at least a week with a sprained left finger and a lower leg contusion. Doncic was hurt in Friday's win over Minnesota. Doncic was off to a blazing start with 92 points in the first 2 games, the most by any Laker in team history in the first 2 games of the season. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Whoa,
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about. Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, aka the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
The Black Hollywood Education and Resource Center proudly presents its 27th annual Real Black Men Short Film Showcase. Join us Saturday, October 25th at the Writers Guild Theater, 135 South Doheny Drive in Beverly Hills, California. The showcase will feature over 20 films by emerging Black male filmmakers from across the country, ready to let their stories be seen, voices be heard, and visions come to life. Saturday, October 25th from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Tickets are on sale now on eventbrite.com. For more information, call 323-957-4656 or email bherc@bherc.org.
Nationwide is so much more than a great insurance company. They're one of America's largest financial services companies. Like how I'm more than Saquon Barkley, the NFL's reigning leading rusher. I'm also the NFL's leading husher. Shh, hush up back there. Wow, I might have just set the hushing record. Well, almost. For your insurance and financial needs, Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Investment Services Corporation, member FINRA, Columbus, Ohio.
Donald Trump has all but declared war on California, sending in a National Guard, blocking disaster relief, and cutting funds to our colleges. And now, he and Texas Republicans are trying to rig the next election by stealing congressional seats from black voters in states like Texas.
They want to rig these elections, and they want the power that gerrymandering provides.
Seriously, look it up. But Prop 50 is how we fight back. It gives Californians the power to fight fire with fire and beat Trump at his own game. Prop 50 creates temporary emergency congressional maps that level the playing field and protect the power of black votes. Not just in California, but across the country. Your vote matters, and the whole country is counting on California to lead. So use your vote to protect our power, our history, and our future. Vote yes on Prop 50 by November 4th. Ad paid for by Yes on 50, the Election Rigging Response Act, Governor Newsom's Ballot Measure Committee, Ad Committee's top funders, HMP for Prop 50, and Fund for Policy Reform.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Jesse Jackson show on KBLA Talk 1580. Reverend Shanya Jha is the founder and former executive director of the Oakland Peace Center and a multi-faith community organizer. Reverend Jha, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. show.
Thanks so much.
I apologize for calling you Dr. Jha before you get your PhD.
I was going to say it's another 2 years.
I assume it's just ordained. Let me just leave that in the ether. We're so proud of you and grateful for your ministry and your work. Before we came forward, we agreed we were going to have a little chat about the Black Panther Party, obviously founded by Bobby Seale and Huey Newton in 1966. And among the many things that they did, in addition to Black community self-defense, they were ahead of the curve on breakfast programs, on health programs for all, on providing basic education for all. And so much of that work was obviously caught up in the politics of the time, but any reasonable reinterpretation of their contribution to the dialogue, very specifically on food programs and health programs, simply cannot be ignored in terms of progressive politics in this country as having identified major factors in why the American system was in fact morally bankrupt and struggling. Reverend Jha?
You know, my partner and I got married 2 months ago, and thank you. And our joint bachelor party was a walking tour of Oakland led by some of the founding members of the Black Panther Party. And I keep thinking, we brought kind of a motley crew, right, of immigrants and children of immigrants, of Black and brown, of queer and straight, and white folks of lots of different religions. And the first thing that the guy leading the tour said to us was, this is a uniquely difficult moment. And it's a moment like the one we went through. The difference is now they're trying to do to all of you what they were trying to do to us. And the thing that I found the most powerful about that statement was he was saying, and we generated amazing things in the midst of that horrific moment for us. And we've got some wisdom for you to carry forward. So I think it's worth noting, you know, the fact that we have school breakfast programs is thanks to the Black Panther Party. The fact that we have across the country so many health clinics has a lot to do with the Black Panther Party. And something else they did that I think is critical for us to learn from right now. One of the women who was helping lead the tour, she was 8 years old the first time she encountered the Black Panther Party, and she went for one of the food programs, but they also made sure to let her know, I know they're telling you at school that you're not smart, but you're smart. Just because you can't read doesn't mean you're not smart. You are brilliant and Black. You are powerful and gifted. You need to go to the school and demand that they teach you better. She had dyslexia. And back in the 60s, 70s, people didn't diagnose dyslexia. Heck, I was only diagnosed with ADHD a couple of years ago, and I'm in my late 40s. But the Black Panther Party was also teaching we have to create self-reliance because they're not for us. That was absolutely part of the message. But we have innate worth. We have the right to fight for ourselves. We have the power to fight for each other. And we have the right to demand what we as a community, we have the right to demand what each other needs. That's, I'm kind of sorry that we lost Mr. Krim, because the work that he's doing is work that we're going to need to figure out how to do outside of schools, right? The history of powerful Black and Indigenous and immigrant folks aren't going to get taught in our public schools anytime soon. This is where I dream of faith communities picking up the mantle, which was true, I know, in your father's day. Faith communities were often where people were learning their own histories. And it's got to be something that happens today so that we don't lose the stories of our powerful ancestors and we don't lose the message of our innate value and our capacity to affect change. So I wanted to acknowledge the Black Panther Party for saying, hey, the Constitution may not have been written for us, but it is actually our document. I got to admit, something I didn't know until I went on that tour, even though Black Panther Party members have mentored a lot of the folks in my community. That was their grounding document. Anytime they ran up against an issue of injustice, they turned back to the Constitution. That was their consistent reference point. It was in the same way that for me, the scripture would be. For them, their uniting document was the Constitution. I spent a lot of time with folks who are so disillusioned with the way our government functions that they've kind of given up on all of the systems and structures. And I loved learning that some of the most radical, powerful people I've ever encountered were using that founding document, the Constitution.
In fact, my book, A More Perfect Union, offers 9 amendments to the Constitution of the United States. And I tell everyone, including during the break, I just got a call from Angela Rye, who wants me to write something for a book that they're releasing next year on the Declaration of Independence. That happened 5 minutes ago. And it's because of my knowledge about the Constitution of the United States.
Yes.
But I wanted to say on this question of the Black Panthers, that here in Chicago, as you can imagine, Chairman Fred Hampton,
yes,
Congressman Bobby Rush, and obviously Bobby Seale had spent a considerable amount of time together. And I should share with you, just to give you some sense of just how revolutionary the thinking is, Chairman Fred Hampton utters the idea of the Rainbow Coalition before Jesse Jackson does in 1984 or 88.
Yeah.
So you've got food programs, you've got health programs, you've got after-school programs, you got child nutrition programs, you got the Rainbow Coalition in terms of a coalition of politics. And I would argue that today, after the passage of the big, better, ugly, beautiful, ugly bill that ain't beautiful at all, I would argue that the Rainbow Coalition is about to become a Painbow Coalition, because we're going to have to unite people around their suffering.
Yeah.
And if you think you're going to be uniting them around their race when we're all suffering, you're going to miss a lot.
Yes.
Of what is about to happen when these 5.5 million people in California and 2.2 million people in Illinois get kicked off of these benefits sometime next week. We're going to have to turn to each other and ultimately not on each other. I'm thinking in this moment, about a minute and 30 seconds or so before we come forward, I'm thinking that your thoughts about the Black Panther Party have to center around just how foresightful, if you will, prophetic they actually were.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up Fred Hampton, because he really did cast this vision of black power for black people, red power for red people, white power for white people, yellow power for yellow people, which isn't the language I'd use today. But he was saying we can show up for each other and still remain grounded in who we are as distinct from each other. And I think that was some of the magic of what was going on in Chicago and across the Black Panther Party, teaching folks from West Virginia how to organize, figuring out ways to be in solidarity with Indigenous and Latino organizers. It was that Rainbow Coalition that transformed the political landscape. And it was how some of the policies that we're trying to fight to protect came into being in the first place. And so when we are gathered around that Painbow Coalition, we're fighting to protect something that original Rainbow Coalition created for us.
I have a couple of questions for Reverend Ja when we come forward, and I'm going to give her, obviously, the final 3 minutes of our program to offer us a word of hope. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. My producer tells me I'm coming out too early and to slow down, so I slow it down to accomplish that. Thank you, Gina. More on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
Congressional impeachment black voters in states like Texas.
They want to rig these elections. They want the power that gerrymandering provides.
Seriously, look it up. But Prop 50 is how we fight back. It gives Californians the power to fight fire with fire and beat Trump at his own game. Prop 50 creates temporary emergency congressional maps that level the playing field and protect the power of black votes. Not just in California, but across the country. Your vote matters, and the whole country is counting on California to lead. So use your vote to protect our power, our history, and our future. Vote yes on Prop 50 on November 4th. Ad paid for by Yes on 50, the Election Rigging Response Act, Governor Newsom's Ballot Measure Committee, Ad Committee's top funders, HMP for Prop 50, and Fund for Policy Reform.
You know that Big Bargain detergent jug is 80% water, right? It doesn't clean as well.
80% water? I thought I was getting a better deal because it's so big.
If you want a better clean, Tide Pods are only 12% water. The rest is pure, concentrated cleaning ingredients.
Oh, let me make an announcement.
Attention shoppers, if you want a real deal, try Tide Pods.
Stop paying for watered-down detergents. Pay for clean. If it's got to be clean, it's got to be Tide Pods. Water content based on the leading bargain liquid detergent.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. I'm really excited that Reverend Ja is our very special guest from the Oakland, California area. And Reverend Ja, I am so grateful that you were here. A few moments ago, you said that you wished Ernest were on the program. Well, he wishes he was on the program with you. And so I certainly hope that you will come back and spend more time with us anytime that you would like to. You're more than welcome. So grateful to have you as our guest. Can I ask you a question about Proposition 50?
Oh, yeah.
How are people receiving that? How are progressives receiving that? And is there any kind of dialogue about any changes or tampering with the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and the spirit of it that could undermine African American and Latino representation in the state as the state tries to draw more Democrats from leaning districts?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking that question because obviously it's a response to the fact that the Voting Rights Act has been brutally under attack for, I would say, I've been seeing it for 20 years. You're in the...
Absolutely.
And I think one thing that people from moderate to progressive are saying they're grateful for in Prop 50 is it is temporary, because I think California takes actually a great deal of pride in the fact that we have a nonpartisan system for creating our congressional districts. What we're going up against is the states that have a very partisan process for creating districts. In fact, the guy I worked for in Ohio, part of why he got pushed out was because of the way politics played a role in districting in that state. So I think there's a lot of anxiety about Prop 50 from that perspective. And the one consolation I think people are taking is this is very explicitly a temporary and imperfect response to a brutal assault on the Voting Rights Act that's happening in other states. So I think a lot of people are glad that someone's fighting back against that. And I think a lot of people are saying, we don't love it as a permanent solution. We think that's just playing the same game that the anti-voting rights folks are playing. But for now, we've got to use the tools that are available to us. And Prop 50 is one of those tools.
You know, I'm hard on the Voting Rights Act, not because it's not the right piece of legislation. I absolutely think it is. I try to be as clear as I can that this piece of legislation was to hold Democratic legislators and legislatures accountable and Republicans accountable to their historic behavior of getting in closed rooms in their state capitals, dividing up the states to protect themselves, and leaving people of color out. Hence, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 desegregates state legislatures. It desegregates Congress. It gives us an equal opportunity to serve. And when Republicans tamper with the Voting Rights Act, or when Democrats tamper with the Voting Rights Act, I really feel some kind of way about that, even if temporarily, because this is about their behavior when they look across and only see all white men. Yeah. That's kind of where I fall on that. And again, I still believe that the political system is the distribution system for the economic system. And so chopping up districts and putting some Hispanics here and some blacks here, someone's going to get unserved in that dynamic.
Yeah.
Because when they're sitting in these legislatures having these meetings, I just don't see them arguing our case. In fact, in this environment, they don't even want to mention that we have a case to be argued.
Yeah.
In light of the tax on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I know you've done a lot of work in the DEI space. I'm sure that it's been very difficult for you in this space as well. Let me ask that question about what do we do in the DEI space, and leave time, obviously, for your 3 minutes of hope at the end of our program.
What do we do about DEI? I suspect that that a lot of the folks who are listening have been wrestling with the horrific impacts of rolling back DEI, largely because we make them, because let me just say, there is an argument being made by people who are threatened by equality, who are threatened by diversity, who are threatened by everybody being given a chance. The narrative is that we, people of color, are overrepresented relative to our gifts. And what I think is about to happen is a grossly incompetent resurgence in our federal programs, in our tech companies, in our corporations, as DEI is rolled back, because one of the things that it was actually preserving was that the most qualified people were going to get those positions even if they weren't white, because that's actually how DEI was functioning, was to provide space for people who had the gifts to actually have access to the positions. But I do think that the fight now might not just be in the workplace or in the corporations. I think the fight now is in the way we are talking about whose rights we're fighting for. I think that there are some really incredible things going on with the Working Families Party is convening weekly calls where people from all over the country, from all races, from all classes, are showing up and learning about messaging, learning about communication strategies, learning about how to build up support for each other at the neighborhood level. And I think that the work of DEI is actually functioning at a very grassroots level now, which is frustrating and also potentially nation changing if we actually show up to do that work.
Mm-hmm. Reverend Job, on our program, we cover a myriad of issues. We go back and forth and we engage, we push and we pull. But to leave people on a high note, we always ask our contributors to give us a word of hope. And I'm particularly inspired by you. I'm inspired by your story. I'm certainly grateful to Reverend Terry Hoard Owens for having you on as our very special guest. Can you lead us in a word of hope in the final few minutes of our program?
Yeah, and I will say that the Reverend Terry Hoard Owens is a big part of my hope because she keeps reminding us to be the church we say we are. Mm-hmm. And I have been struck by moments where I was invited to speak at a church in Kentucky a few years back, and it was a church that had bragged about how they were a purple church, a church that had Republicans and Democrats, and they worshiped side by side, and they thought they had reached the apotheosis, right? They had reached the absolute heights by doing that. The pastor was a white man, his son was black, and after a case of police brutality that had ended up in the death of a black man, he came to the church and he said, "That could have been my son. You all love my son. What are we going to do?" And this church that had assiduously avoided talking about politics for years and years and years, and were proud of that, they said, "Oh, in order to be a church for everyone, we're going to need to talk about the stuff we've been glad to avoid talking about." And it meant they built up relationships with the NAACP in their community. It meant they built up relationships with the LGBT organizations in their community. It meant that they built up different policy-based conversations with homeless service providers in their community. And I like to think that they went from being a purple church that wasn't welcome to anybody who didn't want to avoid politics to becoming an actual rainbow church. We talked about the hard stuff and everyone could be there. And to me, that's a moment of hope that I am seeing in churches all over the country, and with the leadership from people like Reverend Terry, from Reverend Barber, from all sorts of folks. I think that's the hope I'm seeing right now.
Well, I appreciate that. I can tell you this, before you see a rainbow, there's usually a storm.
Well, amen.
There is this tension that we work through.
Yes.
And all of us have to work through it, both collectively and individually.
Yes.
We have to push ourselves beyond our comfort levels to recognize that we are all children of God, that we have a place in this world, we have a place in this society, and that we have a purpose. And in defining that purpose, we find out our true purpose and who we are. Reverend Chow, I'm so grateful that you spent this time with us on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
It is a real honor to have gotten to spend this time with you.
I look forward to your return in the not too distant future. I'm grateful that we have such amazing contributors, and I'm certainly grateful to Reverend Terry Hoard Owens for her extraordinary contribution to getting our week started on Moving Mountain Mondays on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. We have an exciting week for you planned. Stay tuned tomorrow for more with Jesse Jackson Jr. on our show, but also stay tuned, looking forward to every bit of programming on KBLA Talk 1580, because we mean to do the work. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. More on KBLA when we come forward.